what about the PowerShell Universal I was supposed to talk about? Who's heard of PowerShell Universal before? Only one, very few people. Okay, PowerShell Universal is a tool. It's a service which you install on a server, and that lets you do stuff. It lets you create a platform. So you write PowerShell, you write scripts. How do you run those scripts in production? You have to run it, or someone else can run the scripts. How can you have, someone maybe less PowerShell knowledgeable run PowerShell scripts? So if you want to do that, you have either to set up pipelines, and then I have another tool, I don't know what, to execute some pipelines, or you can have some of the tools. Script Runner is another way of doing this, where you can delegate permissions to, hey, this person is allowed to execute my script. So we will see that PowerShell Universal can do this, and it can do more. So the little disclaimer is I'm a reseller, but I'm only a reseller because it's practical. I don't make any money on reselling it, and anyone can just go and purchase it on the Ironman Software website. So Adam Driscoll, which is someone we know, and I have pictures. If you really want to have pictures of him, I also have the similar ones that you sell. So Adam Driscoll, he used to live in Switzerland. I think just when he was there, he started working on this. He was living in Geneva, and then after that, he went back to the US, and he started to write a little web service that can execute some PowerShell. And from there, it went to a big software that we're going to discover today that lets you create your platform. So if you work in a service and say, well, now I can have all my scripts, all my logic and my business logics, and then create a user interface for them to use, create an API for other people to consume directly my automation, and delegate rules and implement RBAC and some other security interface to it. So, is it portal, automation scheduler? I like to call it a platform to build platforms. So it's a web platform. You build your API, you build and schedule, you trigger your jobs, build a GUI on top for your tools, and everything just in PowerShell. How would you do that? That's what we're going to see. So it must be hard to get started. Well, it's not that easy, but if someone shows you and then you follow some, if you start little and then you understand the iterative development process, it will make sense. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of components you will have to learn. Make sure you don't get stuck in your own way. Feel free to reach out to the community. There's a Discord server, or if you want the PowerShell Discord, you can ask me. So let's see what it looks like. And I need to stop sharing and share the screen completely. I find my... Come on, stop. Here we go. So let me just go share. So just to save some time, I didn't want to install it, but I've installed an MSI. If you go, let's just go back here. PowerShell Universal.com. You can go there. You can go to the download page, and then you can just download directly the MSI there. If you just download that, you will be able to install it and use the free version initially. So you can just develop, and then some of the features are free. As soon as you want to do enterprise with authentication, maybe Active Directory or IAD integration, you will need to pay for a license, which is very reasonable, very, very reasonable. You can look at the price page. Once you have this installed, that's just my Windows machine. So if you see I'm a localhost on the port 5000, you have already a web interface that lets you log into the admin page. So if I log into my admin page, if I can click, I forgot my mouse. So this is almost the default installation. There's very little to it, and already there's a lot of features. So let's go start by, you can see I'm logged in as admin over there. I have some notification, and I have like a web portal. That's my web portal. And the web portal tells me, like, I have APIs there with endpoints. I can have documentations. I have automations, apps. We'll see what they are. portal. I'm probably not going to dive into this one. Settings, security. So let's go in security and then first look at identities. Identities is obviously the things that you are logged in, and this is my admin account that I'm logged in because it's a bare install and I have absolutely no integration. It's only running on my machine. You can have obviously Windows authentication, AAD authentication. You can have many type of integrations with what you already have. And then when someone will log in with this, you will see those identities. And if you allow them, people will see the pages that you provide access to. But first thing I want to show you is when you create things and you make some changes to all of this instance, this server instance, it will make change to files on your system. So if you start like I did, just install the MSI and say, well, I want to create a new app or a new API, it will show something on the GUI, but think about this, it always changes the files. So I want to show you this way because that's how people start usually. And actually, I have been here. So the first thing to see, this is my this is on my program data folder, and I have the Universal automation. This is by default when you install, and you have this folder which is repository. When you start the first time, it's empty. You have a database there, which is in this case a SQLite database, but this is the internals of PowerShell Universal. You don't really have to dig into that one unless there's a big problem, which never happens, obviously. But if you look into the repository, well, you will start to find, because I've made some changes, you will see that you start to have some PS1s. If I look into my dashboards, I have some folders, and that's things I've created through the graphical user interface. But I just wanted to show you, this is some PowerShell. So you don't have anything that you don't really know about. Obviously, there's a Git repository there. Just go back, sorry. And dashboards, and you've got some modules in this case. This is me just faffing around. All right, so if it's PowerShell content, we could use VS Code. So let's go into my VS Code, which is already open. Let me just close everything. Send everything. Let's go a bit bigger. All right. So you can see if I do this, you can see my path is the same. So I've opened VS Code directly into that folder. And I can already see all the content on the right, which is where my Explorer is. So you have the dashboard, you have definitions, and you have a few pages in the dashboard section. If I go back to my PowerShell Universal page, if I go to my apps and I look at the list of apps, you can see I have an app running, which is called My User. And that one corresponds to my dashboard, My User over there. So what is this app? So when I click into explore this, then you can see that still on my machine, I have a path of users, and then I can access to an application I've written. And this is just displaying some information. You can see this is Markdown. If you're familiar with Markdown, basically you will see the same content as I have in my Markdown page here. So just by writing some Markdown, a bit of PowerShell, I started to display some information. So it's very basic, but you can just say, well, I had a few lines of code, I created just Markdown, and I can already display some information and probably provide some links. Links that can probably take you to, say, another page. And you have, this interface is coming for free to some extent. Basically, you already have components in there, and you have a little menu on the top left. The menu is very simple because I didn't tweak it, but you can see I have 2 pages, and this is the page I am currently in, and these 2 are the pages available. This is the home page that I'm already in by default, and I have another page which is called list. List is just going and displaying data that I've fetched, and I will get into that in more details later. So how do we create this? I created an app. So I went into PowerShell Universal and said, hey, create me an app, which created basically this file. So I've made this one, I've tweaked a little bit. But this one is saying, well, create a new UD app for Universal Dashboard. That was the former name before it was called just Universal. So create a new app. And the name of the title of the page will be users, and it will have those different pages. And the two pages I have are the list page and the home page, the one I've shown you just before. So with just this, and then obviously I import as well. If you see line 2 to 5, I import the different pages into my app, basically, because I used that variable over there. So what's in that home page? I have a paper. Paper is it's a web component that helps you display in some ways your web page. So this is, I think, material design concepts. If you do some really web content, basically it's just something that if you have a paper, then the background will be white, and you can arrange different paper together, or you have different ways to display it in a web page. And then inside this, I said, well, I want to have some Markdown and get the content of the Markdown from the source directly of my empty file. So just with those 7 lines, I have the page that displays the content of the Markdown. And obviously, if you look at the Markdown, you will see that it's proper Markdown, but when you display it into the web page, it's actually formatted in something that makes sense. So very quickly, we created an app with 2 pages, and now we will look at the code for the list. It's a single line. Well, there's the page, which is defined. Okay, this is my page. This is my URL. But then the content is only a new table. And to the table, I provide some data. And that's a very long line that you should never have in production. But I think it's a one-liner, and many people start with one-liners. You always start with something, okay, I have some information I want to get. I know the system. I know how to get the information. It could be AD, get AD object as an example. And then you say, well, I know all the data. I can put it into my, I can put it very quickly into my terminal. But this user next to me will never open a terminal to look at this data. But everything is there. So how can I get this data and display it to someone? Maybe that person, you don't even trust them, they don't have access. But you can have your web server, the PowerShell Universal server, running it for you with specific credential. And then you can say, well, display the data for that person. They just have to go on the URL, they can have the information, and everything is displayed for them. So that's just a single line. What's the information? So if you go to dummy JSON, I just needed some dummy information. So I just took random website and say, well, let's look at who's providing me with the equivalent of REST API, but with dummy data. So I just went and found this one, and you can see this is just providing some JSON. And it could be any other system, and it doesn't have to be JSON. It's just retrieving objects. And then from those objects, well, if I have this, I can go into my terminal, and I can do invoke REST method. I can type, and then I can use the URI, and I will say, well, give me the objects from there. And I have one big object, which is users. Not very helpful, but okay. Let's go back, users. And then from the users, actually it's users, so it doesn't make sense. But then I have the list of all the users. Okay, how do I do if I just want to see, I don't know, first name, last name? You can't say, because I know you know. No, you don't know. You can say, can go and do a little select. And I want to select what? First name, last name. The select is alias for, you can say object. Select object, exactly.
Script analyzer roles.
Script analyzer on this test, it's not going to be pretty. But that's the idea. So I can find the information, and then I can age. I know some of the properties. I believe we have an email. So I know how to get all this information from PowerShell. I can display information from my Azure tenants. I can display information from my Exchange server if I'm still running one of those. So you can get all the information, and as soon as you can do this, it's quite easy to display it in a table for someone else that doesn't know how to run those. So you can have all your filters, all your logic, and get this displayed. So that's what I've done into that. When I have my select object over there, see, it's just above. I have first name, last name, age, email, phone. All right. And this will be the data for a new table. So with just one line, I started displaying some data. And the problem is, so you have your logic, and then most of the time you will get information which is already accessible in another API, for instance. But then you want to add very specific filtering. So you want to have maybe only the people where, and let's do quickly. Well, there you go. You see, the pilot already knows what I want to do. And I haven't typed that, so really it's good. Greater than 30, yes. Okay, not that young. There we go. Let's try this. So if I take this one and I run this, oh, yes, I have one too many. So I have a list which is now only 1, 2, 3 people over there. All right. So if I add this, and then I can go to my application. All right. I've changed the code. There's a little thing I need to do is restart. Restart the app means it's going to reload basically the configuration files just for this app. I've changed it live on the system. If you're in a production environment, you're not going to do this. You're not going to change the code on the server and do this. There's many ways to manage your code. Well, that's not the problem that we're addressing today. I'll show you. You can just deploy a module, but we'll go back to that one. So I've restarted this application, and if I look at this and I go back on the list, I should have only the 3 people that we filtered. So all the logic that you have, and you build your scripts, but then no one can consume your scripts. That's how people will consume them. You can restrict with roles and permissions who has access to this data. And if they can access is unauthenticated, which is probably in my configuration right now, or actually that's a good point. Maybe I should try, or we'll try another time. If I sign out, okay, let's take this one. If I sign out, I'm not again. As you see, I must be authenticated to have access to it, which is good, secure by default. Wasn't purpose, obviously. All right, so cool. I can do all this logic, but usually you do that, and then there's some users that need this information directly from a web GUI, so that they can do things about it, or just have the list of who's joined in the last on the last 7 days, but I haven't received the welcome email. That's something that probably you can create a one-liner for this, and then you can display. And if they haven't received it, maybe they need to be clicked into another system, so then they can receive this new email. One way of doing this, instead of having someone clicking on just consuming this data from a GUI, is to have an API endpoint. So how can we do an API endpoint that does something very similar? So let's say you want to create a platform that other teams can do to me. Let's say you want to have someone be able to create a new VM just upon an API request. You see, that's exactly a use case you can have. So if we go back to the admin interface, I have this API with endpoints there. So I will create an endpoint, and I want my API to say, okay, list users. Listing the users. And then we won't provide a path. We can provide the security information. In this case, do I want it authenticated or not? Let's do no, so then I don't have to create a token and do this for the demo. If we have time. Okay, if we have time, maybe we'll show this. 45, is it? No. Oh, okay, a bit less. Okay. If I overrun, you just kick me out. This is specific about the execution. I won't get into the details. If you have questions, feel free to ask. But you can see there's a run as. So when you run a script, obviously you can provide specific credentials. Maybe if you want to have one job running as a specific credential to get access to some specific resources, that's the way you can do it. So I just create one, and you say, well, this is the list users API endpoint I've created. So I want to edit it and then see the code. And I'm still in my GUI there, which you should probably not do, but that's probably the first few minutes that when you're going to try out, that's the way you're going to do. I can't remember this one-liner, but I'll do this. But I don't want to have my filter yet. Okay. Created my endpoint. It's going to return some data. So let's try that. So I have a very convenient test tab over there. I can just invoke it. I have a 200, and it's already returned me all the information of the data. All right, this is interesting. So does that work? Let's go and try this from here. So you can see, the URL is over there. Users. So if I do invoke REST method, because I can't type URL, URI, sorry, and I do this, automatically I get the information. Yeah, so if I do format table, why do I have something weird like this? Any clue?
You didn't choose select.
Yeah, I did. I had a select, but I think if I go the code, you can see that I just pasted it. And look, I've pasted too much. I just want the data. So let's remove all of those. I can keep the select object. And I have an expected. Oh, yeah, that's the one. Oh, yeah, I should keep this. Okay, that's the problem when you copy paste. Okay, let's run this one again now. If I can keep the focus there, here we go. That's much better. So if I do invoke, let's type it, web request, and I keep the same, and I need to ask why. Is it content? I can't remember. Or is it data? There we go. So if I use the invoke web request, I'm not using the automatic parsing of the JSON that invoke REST method provides. So it just gives me the result of the HTTP results, like you would look in the browser, which we're going to do in a second. So here I can see that everything that my web server returned me is the result of the PowerShell line I just did. So now I can have anything, not just PowerShell, go and grab the JSON data that I want to provide to the people. And again, if you want to add the logic, this one, if you want, still have my music running, sorry. If you want to add the filter on the business logic, you can just add it there again. Without Copilot, I need to think. And I can run this again. And you can see I have only my 3 returns. So if I do invoke method, URI, FTA, so format table, auto size, and then I have my data in tabular data. So any other system, and then you can have different PowerShell Universal obviously talking to each other, but that's one way of your team exposing data, filtered data, to another team. And then you can have same principle, have different microservices doing some logic, and then the logic is only written in PowerShell. So with PowerShell Universal, the thing that you've been doing for I don't know how many years, now you can expose them in ways that are that can be consumed by other teams directly with an API. They don't have to talk to you. They don't have to ask you about, can you send me the report about X, Y, and Z? They can just consume it directly from the API, or if you want to, provide them with a web view, like a GUI, with this data. Make sense? All right. So there's another point, actually. If you was familiar with Swagger, who knows what Swagger is? I see the pain in your face. But the good thing is the Swagger, actually, I can't remember the link now. The Swagger is automatically generated. Come on, that's not the doc I want. It's probably from the endpoint. That's the one. There we go. The Swagger is automatically generated. At least some of it is automatically generated from what you've done. So this one, the one I'm showing you right now, is the one from the PowerShell Universal API. So everything you're doing through the GUI, you can already do it through the API. You can restart the server. You can, change the add deployments and things like that. In this case, I want to see the endpoints that I've created. And if you create documentations, you can create new folders if you want into that. But if you look at this one, this is the list user that I've created there. So just from there, obviously, you can try it out from the Swagger if you're familiar with it, and then you will have the same information. Execute. Obviously, I've ticked the I don't need to be authenticated to be able to run this. So what if I enable the authentication, obviously I won't have permissions to do it anymore, but I will have to authenticate before I can execute them, and I can use API tokens. And if I use API tokens, then I can do the requests. I'm not going to show you the API tokens, but I'm going to show you how you can create tokens. Because everything's already, it's already provided within PowerShell Universal. I have shown you the identities where you have someone there that exists, and then you can obviously create an identity, and anyone who's logging in, probably because you gave permissions, I don't know, in AD or something, when you have integrations, that's the way you do it. They just log in. You don't have to enable anything in there. Their identity is created there, and they will have the access you provided directly into Universal. But once they exist, they can go and then say, well, I want a token, and they can create their token. You can see that I've created one, or I can create another token, and I want to select which identity to use. And I can add description, and this is where you start to have the default roles. I've used administrator, and then all of those existing roles, I haven't created them there here by default, but obviously you can create your own one. So you can have a list user role, and you will only be able to do the list users. In this case, I just want to show you, I can provide obviously several rows as well, which is a mistake, but I could do this. And you can say when the expiration is, and I don't think, actually, that's a good point. Usually the never didn't work. I don't know if Adam fixed it, but usually 1 year is the maximum that you can have. And anyway, you probably shouldn't do more than that. But because you have APIs, there's a lot of things you can do. You can do around this. So let's just keep it for 30 days. And here you go. You have a token, and they can see, hey, below is the new app token. You can copy it, but if you don't have it, then there you go. So this is just for someone who wants, like, at the moment, I'm the admin, so I can see all the tokens. If I'm logged in as a user, it will be in my space, so I will see only my tokens. Or if I have the admin role, I will see more people. So there's already a lot of security features which are implemented that you can use. You have different types of authentication. You can see the one I have right now is a form. There's a form when I log in because I'm on my local host, but you can have other integrations. And you have the roles here. You can see that's the roles that I've seen in the drop down earlier when I wanted to assign specific role for my token. So you can have a very specific role like admin, but only provide a different role to the token you create. So each token can be used for very specific things. If you want to be very strict about, when you let someone using your service. What I've shown you so far is the very basics when you get started with PowerShell Universal. You start by installing it on your machine, on your dev machine, and then you will explore the capabilities. You see the first use case is displaying data and exposing this data in another way through an API. There are many other ways and much more complex ways you can do. And one of them is, well, you start getting the data and you have a GUI, then why not just have a button to remediate the problem? So you start by having something that says, well, this is the problem. And then you go next, well, if that's a problem, then you can fix it. So you create your little button into your table, which is fix it now. And then after a while, you say, well, if you know the problem, you know how to fix it. Why not automating this automatically? And usually you do that through a scheduler. You have something that grabs the information on every X or during a maintenance window or something. It will go and it will try to fix everything. And if it worked, yay. If it doesn't, tell me why before and tell me what the problem and maybe call someone. So inside PowerShell Universal, in the automation, you have the scripts that you can run. And you have one there, which is get stuff, which is very similar. And basically, that's just to say, well, I can have something that runs my script. So in this case, I just want to run this. And there's a lot of customizations I'm not going to show you. But basically, it's the same as, well, it's kind of a pipeline that will just execute the thing. Again, you can run it as a different user. And you can also schedule the job. It would say, well, I want to create a simple schedule. Every day, get stuff. And I can say, well, I want to execute the get stuff every day. And maybe we should do every day, because it's called every day. And then we can select what time. Because I'm really slow. Okay. Right. So I've created the schedule, and then you can say when it last ran. And hopefully in 2 minutes, I should keep talking for 2 minutes now. In 2 minutes, it should start and trigger the job automatically, and then you will have an interface where you can go and see the results of that script.
Isn't that in 12 hours?
Yeah, that's the problem. So I have a UK. Yeah, actually, you're right. Execution AM. I was way back. I clicked no. I said like this can't be true. So you're right, and let's do this. That's why I took 2 minutes. Okay, let's do 16, 21. No, he doesn't want to. All right, 16, 21. Okay. You see, that's the problem I have. Why AM? I don't know. Every day gets that. Man, that's a funny one. Let's try this. No, he doesn't want to. I'll just click it. No, but that's what I did the first time because I don't trust. I have a UK based system, but you see, he doesn't want to move day. So I can do 11. That's okay, but I can't do. You see, I sent it to do.
Mark report must be something with the latent time.
Yeah. Okay, man. I should have done the presentation in the morning. That would have worked. Not in the afternoon. It's funny. I've never seen that issue before.
That's probably just a time conversion from the browser.
It could be browser is.
I think it's a JavaScript conversion from the UI.
Yeah, it's probably because I'm in
Possibly.
UK. I have a UK setup as well. So, all right, you will not going to see it running then. Okay, that's fine. I will trigger the schedule anyway, so that it still happens. Then you will see every time the job has been triggered, and then you can see on schedule every day, or you can see when it's been run manually, and then you can see which identity has run it. And then you can go, and then you say, well, that's the job ID. You have a limited number that you can configure how many job output you're going to keep. Obviously, the more you have, the more disk space and the more resources you will need. But then you can keep track of what has been running and when. And then you can see the result. And this one was run actually at 6:21. That was run on schedule, which is the weird thing. So this one actually did run because it was not triggered manually. Or maybe it's the trigger, I don't know. I don't want to think when I present at the same time. But basically, it ran, and then you can see the different stream in PowerShell that you can display. And you have what I wanted to show you mostly is you have the history of what has been run, by whom, when, on what trigger. So that can run things automatically and remediate the problems that you discover. But at the same time, you can also have this job being triggered by something else. So you can have an API that just go on call, and then you say, well, because you have the PowerShell Universal API, you can say, if this happens, or if someone triggers this API, then execute the job that I want, that will remediate all the problems in the world. So there's a lot of things you can do, and it's a web server. You can run it in IIS, but obviously this one is just self-contained with a Kestrel in front of it. And the backend is written in C#. The C# is calling some PowerShell. You don't have to write any C# ever. But basically, it's calling just the PowerShell that you've seen. And it's using the graphical interfaces made with React components. And if you really, really want to do it, you can create your own components. And I've done one. I did a QR reader once, which is funny if you like JavaScript or TypeScript and React and stuff like that. Exactly. Exactly. You don't have to do it. There's a lot of components which are already available, and there's a quite good documentation. No, that's not the one I wanted. Computer says no. No, that's the worst. I've lost my computer. Maybe I'll stop sharing for a second. What did I do? Come on. Yeah, but why doesn't it want to come back? There we go. And I'll share again. Nearly done. Okay. I wanted to show you. Obviously, I have the var now that is in the way. That's the one I wanted to do. All right. So you have lots of documentation, and this is the one I just showed you, the Markdown component. A component, as you've seen, is just a command, and that creates the thing that you want. This one is the Markdown. I should have the pages, and the table should be there as well. That's the table. And you have a lot of features that you can have. And just this PowerShell, the PowerShell that you know, can create very dynamic components in React, but you won't have to write the React. And then it will automatically bind the PowerShell data that you do through the scripts to your GUI. So it's really Web 2, you know that term. It's really interactive. It's a single page application, but fully featured, and you can have it. It works on your phone. It works obviously on your laptops. So you can have a proper website, single page applications that just go call some PowerShell and then display it in very interactive. You can have custom forms that will trigger then an action, and the action could be, well, the form will be, you want a new VM, what name do you want? And then you can have your PowerShell to, a regex maybe to validate that the name respect whatever naming convention that you have. You can ask the data, you can find users, start, what permissions do you want to have on the VM? Who do you want to assign it to? And then you will have all this data gathered directly into your PowerShell and then execute your script, which is going to provision it on Azure or your VMware stack, whatever. Make sense? Right, I'm not going to take more of the time because there's a next session after me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you want to know more, well, I'm happy to do some online sessions as well and stuff like that. Have you seen? Do you see the value in using this? Would you use something like that to provide someone else, access to the tools that you've been building already? Or do you have another solution in place maybe that does that? And I'm curious to see why. What?
Well, it's a really easy way to build a REST API to the data.
Yeah, that's what I am.
And it's also not that complicated. You don't need to write the whole stack for the web service.
Yes. Yeah, you just continue writing the PowerShell and then you have it installed on your machine. And then you can go directly from this. You see from your VS Code window that you're probably used to, you see all the data in there, everything that you write. And you remember I've shown you the endpoint I've created. The thing I've created in the interface, it's actually, the file is there already. And that's the thing that I've done on the GUI. It will automatically create the PowerShell in the backend. So you can go and then say, how do we do this? I can't remember. Instead of looking into the documentation, I can start doing it through the GUI, which is going to write the PowerShell, and then you can put this into Git. And then you have something that you can just take and then publish.